let's talk about something that's both terrifying and, let's be honest, a little boring. Yet it affects every single one of us, the US national debt. It's the kind of topic most people would rather avoid, but it's quietly shaping your financial future whether you realize it or not. This number is so massive, so mind-boggling, that it almost feels like science fiction. But unlike a movie, this story is real, and it's quietly draining your wallet every single day. You might not see it happening, but the effects are there, lurking in your monthly bills, your grocery receipts, and your shrinking savings account. Politicians argue on TV, headlines scream about looming crises, and then just as quickly, everyone seems to forget. Except for the debt itself, which never takes a break. It just keeps growing, year after year, quietly piling up in the background, while the rest of us try to get on with our lives. But here's the thing. This isn't just a Wall Street problem or something for economists to worry about. It's a ticking time bomb hidden under the entire economy. And when it goes off, it won't just be bankers and politicians who feel the shockwaves. It will be all of us. So, what's the government's solution? Not to fix the problem, but to make it disappear, at least on paper. And the way they do that is by using your money. Every time you pay taxes, every time you save a little for the future, a piece of that is quietly redirected to keep the debt machine running. Your savings, your paycheck, your future dreams, they're all being used in this elaborate financial magic trick. It's like watching a magician pull a rabbit out of a hat, except the rabbit is your hard-earned cash, and it's vanishing right before your eyes. The uncomfortable truth is this: the government is cornered by a mountain of IOUs, promises to pay that it can't possibly keep without some creative accounting. And so it's found a sneaky way out, one that shifts the burden onto ordinary people like you and me. What does that mean for you? It's a slow, almost invisible erosion of your purchasing power. Prices creep up, your dollar buys less, and your standard of living quietly slips away. It's a disappearing act where you're both the audience and, unfortunately, the victim. So let's pull back the curtain and expose the real story behind that jaw-dropping $38 trillion in national debt. How is it being erased from the books, and why are you the one paying the price? The answers might surprise you, and they'll definitely make you think twice about what's really happening to your money. By the end of this, you'll see that dollar in your wallet for what it truly is: a melting ice cube in the desert sun, shrinking a little more every day. The question is, what can you do before it disappears completely? $38 trillion. Try to picture it. It's impossible. Spend $1 million a day. It'd take you over 100,000 years to burn through it. This debt dwarfs billionaire fortunes and grows by $1 trillion every 100 days. Why does it matter? Because the interest alone is now a black hole in the US budget. We spend more on interest than on defense or Medicare. Every dollar spent on interest is a dollar not spent on schools, bridges, or research. The debt is no longer a tool. It's a dead weight dragging us down. When you hear $38 trillion, don't tune out. It's a direct tax on your future. It's why public services are strained and infrastructure crumbles. We've fed this monster for decades, and now it's eating us. And the government's solution? Even scarier than the problem. Massive debt? It's a phrase we hear all the time, but the numbers are truly staggering. The US national debt has soared to levels that were once unimaginable, ticking up by the second, a relentless reminder of promises made and bills coming due. The obvious answers seem simple enough: spend less or make more. Just like any household, you'd think the government could tighten its belt or find new sources of income, but the reality is far more complicated, and the stakes are much higher. In Washington, the idea of cutting spending or raising taxes is more than just unpopular. It's political suicide. Politicians know that even suggesting these moves can end careers overnight. The system is built to resist change, especially when it comes to the nation's wallet. The biggest budget items, Social Security, Medicare, and defense, are essentially untouchable. These programs are the backbone of government spending, deeply woven into the fabric of American life. Any attempt to cut them sparks outrage, protests, and a swift backlash from voters. Cut these programs, and you're almost guaranteed to lose your job. No politician wants to be the face of slashing benefits or weakening national security. The political cost is simply too high. Meanwhile, the rest of the budget is already stretched thin. After the big-ticket items, there's barely enough left for everything else: education, infrastructure, research, and more. There's little room to maneuver, and every dollar is fiercely defended. Raising taxes, that's another non-starter. No one wants to campaign on a promise to take more from people's paychecks. And the kind of tax hikes needed to make a real dent in the debt would likely trigger a recession, hurting families and businesses across the country. In other words, the medicine would kill the patient. The cure is so harsh, it could do more damage than the disease itself, leaving the economy weaker and the public angrier. Both parties, over decades, have made promises they simply can't afford. financing them with endless borrowing. The result? A mountain of debt that keeps growing, with no easy way out. Now, the road has ended. The common sense solutions, spending cuts or tax hikes, are off the table, blocked by political realities and public resistance. The debt is simply too big, interest payments are eating up more and more of the budget, and the political will to act has vanished. The government is running out of options, and time is running short. So what's left? A sneakier option, one that doesn't require votes, headlines, or public approval. It's a solution that operates quietly, behind the scenes, and most people won't even realize it's happening until the effects are felt everywhere. The government is about to solve its debt problem in a way you'll barely notice, until it's too late. The consequences will ripple through the economy, touching every American. Let's see how this hidden strategy works and why it could change everything. When a country finds itself unable to pay back its debts, it faces a critical crossroads. There are three main paths it can take, each with its own consequences. The first is to default outright, simply refusing to pay back what it owes. The second is to try to balance the books by slashing government spending or raising taxes, which can be deeply unpopular and politically risky. But there's also a third, much quieter option, one that happens behind the scenes and often goes unnoticed by the public, the so-called soft default. A hard default, where the government just stops paying its debts, would be catastrophic. It would send shockwaves through the global financial system, trigger a crisis of confidence, and likely plunge the economy into chaos. For a country like the United States, which issues the world's reserve currency, this is simply not an option. The fallout would be too severe, both at home and abroad. The second option, cutting spending or raising taxes, sounds straightforward, but in reality, it's a political minefield. Every dollar cut from the budget means less funding for programs people rely on, and every tax hike sparks outrage among voters. In a deeply divided political climate, getting agreement on these tough choices is nearly impossible. Politicians know that making these moves could cost them their jobs. So, what does the government do instead? It turns to the soft default. This means paying back its debts with money that's worth less than when it was borrowed, thanks to inflation. By quietly allowing prices to rise, the government reduces the real value of what it owes, without ever missing a payment or making dramatic budget cuts. Here's how it works. Imagine you're owed $100, but you won't get it for another 10 years. If inflation causes prices to double over that decade, your $100 will only buy what $50 could buy today. The number on the check is the same, but its purchasing power has been cut in half. This is the hidden cost of inflation. So, while the government technically pays you back every cent it promised, you end up with money that buys far less. Your savings, your investments, and your future plans all take a hit, even though on paper nothing seems amiss. This isn't an accident, it's a deliberate strategy. By keeping inflation higher than the interest rates paid on government debt, the real value of that debt shrinks year after year. It's a slow, almost invisible process, but over time it can wipe out huge amounts of government debt without a single headline about default or austerity. The cost, however, is borne by ordinary people, especially savers and bondholders. If you've worked hard to save money, or if you rely on fixed income investments, inflation quietly erodes your wealth. It's a silent transfer of value from the public to the government, happening bit by bit, year after year. In effect, the government is devaluing the currency to make its debts easier to manage. The dollars you hold lose value, but the government's debt burden shrinks in real terms. It's a subtle trick, one that most people don't notice until their money doesn't go as far as it used to. It's the financial equivalent of putting your thumb on the scale, tipping the balance in the government's favor, while everyone else pays the price. And this isn't just a theory, it's happening right now, on a massive scale. Around the world, governments are using inflation to quietly reduce their debt burdens while the public feels the pinch at the grocery store, the gas pump, and everywhere else. You're losing purchasing power every day, and most people don't even realize it's happening. That's the magic trick of the soft default. The government erases its debt and the public barely notices, until it's too late. How does the government keep this inflation engine running? By forcing banks to buy its debt. After the 2008 crisis, regulations like Basel III require banks to hold safe assets, meaning U.S. Treasury bonds. Banks are essentially forced to buy trillions in government debt, creating a captive market. This keeps borrowing costs low for the government, even as inflation rises. If banks weren't required to buy, they'd demand higher interest rates. But with no choice, the government pays next to nothing. The result? Banks have less to lend to you or small businesses. They make up for low returns with higher fees or loan costs. It's a subtle mechanism that funnels private money into government deficits. The first critical gear in the machine, cheap borrowing, while inflation does the dirty work. And you pay the price. The next trick? Manipulating how inflation is measured. If your plan is to use inflation, you need to hide how bad it is. The Bureau of Labor Statistics has changed how it calculates the Consumer Price Index, CPI, over the years. Substitution. If steak gets expensive, CPI pretends you'll just buy chicken. Hedonic adjustments. If a laptop is pricier but faster, CPI might say it's actually cheaper. These tweaks lower the official inflation number, even as your real costs soar. That's why the government says inflation is 3% but your grocery bill is up 20%. Lower CPI means smaller Social Security increases and less government spending. It also hides the true scale of the soft default. It's statistical sleight of hand, masking your financial pain. The government's most powerful tool? The Federal Reserve's money printer. When there aren't enough buyers for government debt, the Fed creates new digital dollars to buy treasury bonds. This quantitative easing is just modern money printing. More dollars, same amount of goods. So each dollar is worth less. It's basic supply and demand. The result, prices rise across the board. Stocks, real estate, groceries. The Fed's money printing powers the inflation the government needs to shrink its debt. But your savings buy less every year. Inflation is a hidden tax, no vote required, just a few keystrokes at the Fed. It's the final piece of the soft default puzzle. The result? A growing gap between rich and poor. The old advice, work hard, save money, now guarantees you'll lose ground. With inflation eating away at cash, you're forced to invest in risky assets just to keep up, but the wealthy already own most of the assets that rise with inflation. When the Fed prints money, asset prices soar, benefiting the rich. The average person's paycheck lags behind, and their savings lose value. Debts stay the same, but everything else gets more expensive. This system punishes savers, rewards asset owners, and widens inequality. It's not capitalism, it's a rigged game to solve government debt at your expense. The closer you are to the money printer, the better you do. Everyone else falls behind. Now, there's a new twist. Central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, sold as a modern upgrade, they actually give the government unprecedented control over your money. Unlike your bank account, a CBDC is a direct liability of the central bank. Every digital dollar is programmable. The government could deposit money that expires, impose negative interest rates, or block certain purchases. It's the ultimate tool for social engineering and financial control. The hidden tax of inflation could be replaced by direct, programmable control over your wallet. Cash offers privacy and freedom. A fully digital currency erases that. Every transaction could be tracked and analyzed. This isn't science fiction. Central banks are developing these systems now. The quiet war on your savings is about to get louder. The future of your money is the future of your freedom.